Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out today. That was an interesting State of the State address by our governor. I think, he did what governors are supposed to do, paint a rosy picture about the state, how it's stronger and fairer. But I ask this question, stronger and fairer for who? Right? You don't have to go any further than the grocery store and see how much the cost of basic food is for a family today. You don't have to go any farther than pull up to the gas pump and see what a gallon of gas is costing a family today. You don't have to go any further than mass transit to see what the fares are going up to. Get on the toll roads. The tolls are increasing. And then maybe get your electric bill to see what the utility rates are now here in the state of New Jersey. Right? And that doesn't even touch upon where property taxes have gone. This state has become, in the last 7 years, more and more and more unaffordable. And in my opinion, that's happened because we've been under one-party rule, and these progressive policies that you heard about today are choking our families. And the governor is intent on doubling down, on spending more money. We're facing a structural deficit in this budget of anywhere between $2 billion and $4.5 billion, depending on who you speak to. The days of spending outside of our means are coming to an end. Quite frankly, the governor was lucky because of all of the money that came from the federal government as a result of COVID. But the opportunities that came with that money, in my opinion, have been squandered. You can remember the night of the two budgets ago when, in the last 24 hours, the Democrat majority in the legislature and the governor added $1 billion to the budget for special interest projects around the state. $1 billion. That's gone. That could have went to helping families and seniors. When you look at the cost of living here in New Jersey, you realize pretty quickly how bad it is getting when, and the governor, I think, mentioned this today, the homeless rate here has increased 24%. We have veterans living on the street. More and more people are living paycheck to paycheck. If we don't get this affordability crisis under control, we're going to be in real trouble because the revenues are not coming in like they were projected to, and the federal money is gone. This is where the rubber is going to meet the road. So I'm all about spending money where it needs to be spent, but we got to learn to live within our means. And today's State of the State address to me didn't sound like the governor's got that message. John?
Thanks, Leader. Well, it's interesting that the governor started out today talking about President-elect Trump, because we're going to see shortly that the state of our state is that New Jersey is completely reliant on President Trump to fix their failures. Democrats need Trump to increase renewable energy subsidies. Democrats need Trump to end congestion pricing. Democrats need Trump to restore the full SALT deduction. But they'll posture on partisan fights that don't help everyday people. Democrats want to fight for illegal immigration, even though the people want it to stop. Democrats want to sue Trump for everything possible, wasting taxpayer monies on lawsuits instead of lowering taxes. Democrats want to keep wasting government because their special interests rely on it. You can pick up a 24-year-old newspaper and read about the same persistent problems. At least back then, you could pick up a newspaper. Now Democrats get away with more as accountability fades and taxpayers are left to pay the price. But look out. In 6 weeks, we'll hear from the governor about his budget proposal. A massive budget shortfall, underperforming revenue, a depleted surplus or higher taxes, and the Stay New Jersey nightmare. The one thing that he said today that just about knocked me off my seat, he talked about fully funding education to keep property taxpayers from getting hit. And the legislature had to pass a bill that he signed that would allow school districts or municipalities to raise taxes up to 10%, where they've cut their school funding to the point where there would be massive teacher layoffs and loss of programs in many schools across the state. So what he talked about making sure property taxes weren't going up, he must have forgot he signed that bill that would allow up to a 10% property tax increase in the state of New Jersey for schools. So with that, we're going to take some questions.
Sounds probably like the two of you want to hear more about affordability in today's speech.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, there's a lot of misprioritized spending in our budgets. There's things we really don't need. Tony talked about that $1 billion gift on the last hour of the budget 2 cycles ago. There was a thing in there with the art museum. There was lots of money that if we claw that back, do away with non-essential things, we could properly fund education and make sure that property taxpayers were helped. But they don't want to hear it. They want to keep growing government, bigger and broader and wider, and then just eventually gets kicked back to the locals, and it hits where? Property taxes.
To be clear, what is the definition here of non-essential benefits? Can we get some examples?
The Pompidou is one example. It was like a 40 million plus for an art museum. Why is that the state's responsibility to do that for the city it was in? We need to we don't properly take care of funding our school formula. We don't properly take care of making sure that we do our share at the state so we could reduce property taxes on schools so that it becomes become more efficient and not dump it back on the taxpayer. They just did it. They just did it in the last year. They made it so that you can raise property taxes up to 10% on the school bill that they have already because they're underfunding a whole litany of school districts.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you know, they talk about fully funding the school formula, but yet there were a number of school districts that lost millions of dollars in funding in one cycle. You know, that's a direct impact on the property taxpayer. And here in New Jersey, we live off a system that your property tax relief is based at the whim of the current governor, right? The current governor decides in his budget how much they're going to put into Anchor, how much they're going to put into Stay New Jersey. Why should we worry about each governor having to figure out how much extra money is in the budget in order to give property tax relief? Why don't we just start lowering the costs of government? You know, we need to get back to a situation where the state takes a holistic look at the budget and says, what do we need to do? What would we like to do? And what can we no longer afford to do, right? And then based on the revenues, live within those means, rather than spend like crazy and then figure out how much is left over to give for property tax relief, because it's just not working. It just isn't. I mean, you see it. You talk to people on the street. I talk to folks every day that tell me how hard it has become to live here. And that's not a good thing. It's not stronger and fairer. Not at all.
So what do you all think about the affordable housing bill?
Look, part of our housing shortage issue is the fact that we have the inbound new residents in New Jersey are predominantly folks who have come into the country illegally. And frankly, our people who live in New Jersey are competing with them for housing. The process, it's a federal issue, I'll admit that. Process at the border is totally broken, and we're hoping to see that fixed real shortly here to have a better process to gain entry where you would have a job, have a way to make a living, be on the books, pay taxes, to gain entry to the country in general. And I believe the new president is going to take care of that, close down the border, but they need to create a new process. The process now is much too difficult for people to achieve. So the housing thing, the pressure on housing right now, frankly, is people coming in here that have nowhere else to go, and they land in Jersey. And we welcome them.
But do you support the municipal obligations?
Yeah, let me say this about the affordable housing legislation that's now law, right? The problem with that legislation is, and let me make something perfectly clear from the very beginning, we all support affordable housing here in New Jersey. But that legislation was crafted without any local planning. No planning went into that legislation. In other words, nobody looked at where can this housing be placed? Is there infrastructure available? Are there jobs available? Is mass transportation available? They came up with a regional number and then just put it on each municipality. Mayors are coming to us and saying, look, we'll build the housing, but who's going to pay the $5 million I need to put in a new municipal well so I can have water to supply that housing? Who's going to pay the $20 million for me to upgrade my storage plant so that I can take the storage from that facility? Those type of things, while you may get affordable housing, are going to drive the property taxes so high because the towns have no way to pay for that stuff except the bond for it, that it becomes a vicious cycle. So if you want to truly build affordable housing that will be successful, you got to speak to the people on the ground. You got to look to where that infrastructure is available, and you got to build it in such a fashion that people can actually utilize it. Because what's happening now is the towns are just doing everything they can to try to make ends meet. And in my estimation, I don't think half of these homes will ever be built.
And if I could just add one more thing to that. Everybody wants to talk about affordable housing. You know, it's gone up a lot for everybody. There's a lot of dynamics there that push it. The fact is, in many cases, they're moving people from their neighborhoods where they live now, where they have established roots, and also their workplace is very close, and they're putting a great distance away from where they work. And then there's going to be more pressure on Route 80 or 78 or whether in our area where I live in the north and other roads. And then they have to travel hour and a half round trip every day to get to work, rather than thinking about where the workplaces are now and having that new affordable housing occur where the jobs are. There's a lot of places that are just arbitrarily moving people in, and there's not the job market. So then you're creating more commuters. You talk about green this, but the cars are putting out more exhaust and traffic, and the train system that we have for what the people pay. New Jersey, not to coin a term here, but New Jersey Transit is a train wreck, and reliability is not there. People are paying more and more in the fares. They put a new tax on last year, and there's been no substantive improvement with the transportation system. But then you want to move people further away and put more burden on systems that can't handle it in the first place. So it wasn't well thought out as to where it should land. And we'll see what happens. More traffic, more pollution, more problems.
All of that aside, and just taking zoning reform as its own issue, do you see any support within your caucuses for zoning reform that limits or reduces local control or home rule?
I think the devil will be in the details, right? If they're just going to impose zoning requirements, then no, I don't see that. If there's sound planning that's put into it, and it makes sense, then we'll see. But the devil will be in the details. You know, look, I think if this last election showed anything, it's that people are just tired of these progressive policies that sound really good, but is costing everybody in their pocketbooks, right? People just want both parties to work together. I'll give you an example. Last year, we had to refund the Transportation Trust Fund, right? The Democrats' proposal was a gas tax. The Republicans put together a plan that would have fully funded the Transportation Trust Fund for a longer period of time. I think it was eight years other than 5, right? And it didn't require a tax increase. Didn't require a gas tax. Summarily rejected. Those are the type of things that I think people are starting to say, wait a minute. This one-party rule in Trenton just isn't working. Start working together. Start sharing ideas. Start planning for the future. Don't just have one party control what decisions are made. Because let me tell you, there's some great ideas out there. And they're great ideas that can save money for our taxpayers.
And then I was wondering if you had any reaction. There were a couple of Republican or at least bipartisan proposals the governor mentioned. I'm thinking specifically of the in-school phone bans and the farmland assessment reform.
Look, there are things that we work together with the governor on all the time. You know, it was my 2 pieces of legislation dealing with crime, right? That reversed the Attorney General's, no chase policy and increased the penalties for car thefts, burglaries, and homes evasion. The governor just signed that bill last year. And as a result of that, after working with the State Prosecutors Association, the State Chiefs Association, the Sheriff's Association, after spending a lot of time talking to the folks that are on the ground that know what they need, the tools they need to combat crime, we developed bipartisan legislation that has had an impact. Governor talked about it. That's what people want. That's where we need to go. Not these progressive policies. This energy master plan, we still don't have a cost-benefit analysis on this energy master plan. How much is it going to cost to get there? Elimination of natural gas. What is it costing us in our electric bills, right? These are all things that have a direct impact on people's pocketbooks. And this is the kind of stuff that I think people are fed up with, and they want an opportunity to see these other ideas come through.
And so let's just say you do get a Republican governor. What exactly do you want to cut? Give me some specifics here. What would you cut under a Republican administration? And if you all did have control of the Statehouse, what would you be cutting?
Look, the governor would put together a budget which would be much leaner than it is now. And people say it can't be done. When Governor Christie came in, midstream in the budget that year, and it was somewhere around $33 billion in that when Corzine left, in January, he called us all in and cut $1 billion out of half a year of that $33 billion. So that was like $2 billion out of the full budget. It can be done, but we'd have to get in there and go line by line through the budget. One example today, he talked about all-day kindergarten. We still don't have all-day kindergarten in some schools in New Jersey, apparently. But yet, they started building a pre-K program because it really sounds good and it sells well, and they didn't finish full-day kindergarten first. This is how it happens. They start something, and then they don't finish it. Then they'll start something over here and don't finish it and dump the cost of those programs back to the locals. It's not thought out. They message well on things people want to hear. Like the cell phone ban, I can tell you this, I had 2 high school kids sitting next to me that my senator brought. They didn't like that idea very, very much, and probably some parents won't. I don't disagree with, there's a lot of mental health issues because kids are constantly going at each other with the phones, but they just throw it out there. We really need to vet that and talk to parents and things, because that communication link between kids and their parents is important. I just think they should just have flip phones, myself personally, so they can make the call to their mom, dad, grandparents, or whatever. But he threw it out. We never knew anything about it coming out there. But there are ways to cut the budget. You'd have to go line by line, and you'd have to re-appropriate dollars to more meaningful programs and cut the waste. Believe me, give it a shot, we'll do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll see you in 6 weeks.